Your polls show that you are dominating the Republican race right now, but you are also under active federal investigation for trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Your first term ended with a deadly riot at the Capitol, and you still have not publicly acknowledged the 2020 election results. Why should Americans put you back in the White House?
Because we did fantastically. We got 12 million more votes than we had in, as you know, in 2016. I actually say we did far better in that election. Got the most that anybody's ever gotten as a sitting president of the United States. I think that when you look at that result and when you look at what happened during that election, unless you're a very stupid person, you see what happens. A lot of the people in this audience, and maybe a couple that don't, but most people understand what happened. That was a rigged election, and it's a shame that we had to go through it. It's very bad for our country. All over the world, they looked at it. And they saw exactly what everyone else saw. You look, even if you just look recently with the 51 intelligence agents, that made a 16-point difference. If you look at the FBI, and Twitter, they call it Twitter files, made a big difference.
Will you suspend polarizing talk of election fraud during your run for president?
Yeah, unless I see election fraud. If I see election fraud, I think I have an obligation to say it. And you know what we went through a short while ago has really put our country in a big problem. I hope to do that. I hope we're going to have very honest elections. We should have voter ID. We should have one-day elections. We should have paper ballots instead of these mail-in votes. But the answer is yes, and I hope that it's going to be very straight up, because if it's going to be straight up, we're going to win the election.
Do you have any regrets about your actions on January 6th?
Well, you know, January 6th was, again, we go back to it, but January 6th had to do with the fact that hundreds of thousands of people, and you don't see the pictures very often. A lot of the people here probably were there. January 6th, it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. That was prior to the walk down to the Capitol building. I don't think, and I've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people. I've never spoken to a crowd as large as this. And that was because they thought the election was rigged. And they were there proud. They were there with love in their heart. That was an unbelievable, and it was a beautiful day. And what I was asked to do, I wasn't involved in it very much. I was asked to come in. Would I make a speech? I made a speech, offered them 10,000 soldiers. I said, it could be 10, it could be more, but I offered them specifically 10,000 soldiers. If they would have taken 500 soldiers, you wouldn't have had the problem. They turned it down. And if you look at the Inspector General report, he says they turned it down. They made a terrible mistake.
Well, you said you weren't very involved that day. You did tell your supporters to come to Washington. You tweeted about it, about that speech that happened on the rally.
Am I allowed to say that?
When they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home? I
don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out. So if you look at, on January 5th, the day before, I said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Stay peaceful. This was the day before, and this was in the form of Twitter. Now I use Truth Social. I think it's far superior, okay? I hope everybody's on Truth. If you look, January 6th, this is before 2:30. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. This is right after, as it was happening. But what happened is they took it down. I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there.
But one person who was at the Capitol that day, as you know, was your vice president, Mike Pence, who says that you endangered his life on that day.
I don't think he was in any danger.
Mr. President, do you feel that you owe him an apology?
No, because he did something wrong. He should have put the votes back to the state legislatures, and I think we would have had a different outcome. I really do.
But he doesn't have a significant verdict that was reached yesterday. I know this is something you want to weigh in on as well. A Manhattan jury found that you sexually abused the writer E. Jean Carroll and defamed her. You've denied this. But what do you say to voters who say it disqualifies you from being president?
Well, there aren't too many of them because my poll numbers just came out. They went up.
Do you think that will deter women from voting for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think the whole thing, just so you understand, ready? I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door. She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department, so we had this great chemistry. And a few minutes later, we end up in a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register. And then she found out there were locks on the door. So she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial. She found one that was open. What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay? I don't know if she was married then or not. John Johnson, I feel sorry for you, John Johnson.
Mr. President, can I?
No, but think of it.
I know you're recounting what she said, but Mr. President.
Let me just, if I could, because you asked the question.
This was a
just so you
jury,
understand,
though.
if I was walking in at the bar, because I was very famous then, and I owned the Plaza Hotel right next door, and I owned buildings around it, I'm not going into a dressing room of a crowded department store. Then I say, if she was being raped, and by the way, they said she wasn't raped. Okay, that was her charge. It wasn't.
They found that you sexually abused her.
What? Say what? They did. They said he didn't rape her. And I didn't do anything else either. You know what? Because I have no idea who the hell she is.
But Mr. President, can I ask you, given you're recounting
I
your
don't know
version?
who, and I tell you this.
But Mr.
Are you
President,
ready?
can I
swear
ask
on
you
my
because-
children, which I'd never do. I have no idea who this woman. This is a fake story, made up story. We had a horrible Clinton-appointed judge. He was horrible. He allowed her to put everything in. He allowed us to put nothing in.
Mr. President,
this is a
you're
fake
recounting your version of
story.
events here. This year, there have already been more than 200 mass shootings in 2023. If you are reelected, are there any new gun restrictions that you would sign into law?
I would do numerous things. For instance, schools, we would harden, very much harden. And I'm a very believer. I believe in teachers. I love teachers. I think they're incredible. And they love the children, not quite like the parents, but they love the children in many cases almost as much. Many of these teachers are soldiers, ex-policemen. They're people that really understand weapons. And you don't need 5% of the teachers would be more than you could ever have if you're going to hire security guards. But in addition to that, have security guards, you have to harden your entrances. You have to make schools safe. And you can make other places safe. But it is a big mental health problem in this country more than anything else. And remember, we have 700 million guns, 700 million. Many people, if they don't have a gun, they're not going to be very safe. I mean, if they don't have a gun, it gives them security. Now, you need them for entertainment, you need them for hunting, you need them for a lot of different things. But there are people that if they didn't have the privilege of having a gun in some form, many of them would not be alive today. You know, there's a certain country that had a very strict policy on guns, very, very strict.
Which country?
And, Brazil, okay? Brazil, very strict. And the former president of Brazil, and the killing was incredible. They were walking into people's homes and killing people. They had no protection. He said, go out and buy guns. People went out and bought guns, and it went way down. The numbers went way down because they had security. If you look at Chicago, Chicago has the single toughest gun policies in the nation. They are so tough you can't breathe. New York, too, and other places also. All of those places are the worst and most dangerous places. So that's not the answer.
No.
Title 42 is expected to expire tomorrow. Our southern border and now our northern border are experiencing record migration. We learned on May 2nd that the Biden administration plans on deploying 1,500 troops to the southern border. Do you agree with deploying troops to the border, and how will a Trump administration slow down the rate of migrants coming across all our borders?
Sure. A very fair question, especially since tomorrow is going to be a day of infamy. You're going to have tens of thousands of people pouring into our country. Even the judge, the judge overruled them when they wanted to terminate it early. And he said, that you better extend this thing. The judge in Texas said, I hope you're going to extend this, but this is my policy that they're letting terminate because they lost in court. They wanted to go earlier. You're going to have millions of people pouring into our country right now at a level that nobody's ever seen before. These people are sick. Anybody that wants this to happen to our country, they're destroying our country, and this should not be allowed to happen. How they're not going to do a version of Title 42 or my Title 42, which was tough. If people are sick and have infectious diseases and lots of other problems, we don't want them being into our country. We have enough problems right now. We have problems like we've never had in the history of our country.
But Mr. President,
our country is being destroyed.
The reason it's ending is because the health policy, the COVID-era pandemic emergency, is coming to an end. That's what Title 42 was. You put it in place because
That's
of COVID.
True, but when
it comes to big questions about what your immigration policy would look like if you are reelected, some of your Republican rivals have criticized you for not fulfilling the promises that you made on the campaign trail, like finishing the border wall. So how did voters know that you would get those done if you're reelected?
I did finish the wall. I built a wall. I built hundreds of miles of wall, and I finished it. And then I said, we have to build some more because there are areas like water going through a dam. There are some areas where a lot of people are coming. You close up one and they come in through another. And we started another 100 miles of wall. In fact, I said to my people, if we start this and don't finish it, and then we had a rigged election, I'm sorry to say it.
The election was not rigged,
okay,
Mr.
good,
President. You can't
I'm
keep
glad
saying
you
that
said
all night long.
And so
You cannot
then
keep saying
they
that the
took
election
over
was
and they
rigged.
decided not to finish it. It would have taken them 3 weeks. I built hundreds of miles of wall. If we didn't have it, it would be hard to believe it could be any worse. They're just letting people flow into our country. Look, a country has to have borders. There's never been anything like is happening to our country right now.
The current administration has made it clear that we should continue to provide military equipment to Ukraine so that they can defend themselves. Do you support this decision, and how would you deal with the increasing threat posed by Vladimir Putin?
First of all, thank you very much. It's really nice. And it's an important question, so important, because we're giving away so much equipment. We don't have ammunition for ourselves right now. We don't have ammunition for ourselves. We're giving away so much. But here's the thing. I have to say it to start off, no longer matters. If I were president, this would have never happened. And even the Democrats admit that. Putin knew it would have never happened. And his pipeline would have never happened. A lot of things would have never happened. But this would never happen. And all those dead people, both Russian and Ukrainian, they wouldn't be dead today. And all those cities that are blown up and disintegrated right to the ground, that wouldn't have happened. Okay, now, here's the problem. We've given so far $171 billion. They've given, meaning European Union, which is approximately the same size altogether as our economy. They've given about 20. So we're at 170, let's say, and they're at 20. You don't have to know too much about history to realize, or geography, to realize that they're a little bit more affected than we are, okay? So they've got to put up a lot more money.
The question here is, would you give Ukraine weapons and funding if you were
I would
elected?
sit down. Let me just put it a nicer way. If I'm president, I will have that war settled in 1 day, 24 hours.
Can you say if you want Ukraine or Russia to win this war?
I want everybody to stop dying. They're dying, Russians and Ukrainians. I want them to stop dying.
But that's the question that investigators have, I think, is why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's
You
the
mind?
answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to. You're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
Can you answer why you held on to the documents?
I was negotiating, and we were talking to NARA, that's Washington, to bring whatever they want. They can have whatever they want. When we left Washington, we had the boxes lined up on the sidewalk outside for everybody. People are taking pictures of them. Everybody knew we were taking those boxes. And the GSA, the government service, the GSA was the one taking them. They brought them down to Mar-a-Lago. We were negotiating with NARA. All of a sudden, they raid our house. When Biden has his documents, he won't give back the 1,850 boxes. And you're going to find some real gems in there.
But it was
So
Biden
you
who
can't have
alerted
all
them that
these
he had
different
the
sets of-
documents.
all
The
these
National
different
Archives
sets of-
reached out to you to get your documents back. Why did you not turn them over when you got a subpoena
Because we were
asking for you to turn
negotiating
them
with
over?
them. We were negotiating with them as per the Presidential Records Act. We were negotiating with NARA.
That's not what the
Very
Presidential
nice
Records
people,
Act says. I've
but they
seen
got to
it.
love our Constitution a little bit more, and they shouldn't red flag it, by the way. Very nice people. We were negotiating with NARA, and that's what the Presidential Records Act says, because Richard Nixon, surprisingly, had problems, and he had a lot of problems dealing with NARA, and they ended up passing
that's why
legislation
they
called the
created the
Presidential
PRA.
Records Act, just for this kind of a thing. We were
My
dealing
last
with them. We
question
were
on this
talking.
sub-
Excuse
on
me.
this
Wait a minute.
subject,
Wait.
Mr. President.
We were talking to them. We would have done it, but all of a sudden they raided the house. Now, why hasn't the FBI raided Biden?
But I just explained to you
Why?
why.
No.
It's because they alerted the government that they
Okay.
had those documents and had them come and get the documents
Why
from
did
his
Biden-
house.
no, they
My
didn't take
question
them.
for you, though, when it comes to documents, do you still have any classified documents in your possession?
Are you ready?
Do you?
No, I don't have anything. I have no classified documents. And by the way, they become automatically declassified when I took them. But
No, you have
why?
to declassify
Let me
them.
ask you a question. Why is it that Biden had 9 boxes in Chinatown, and he gets a lot of money from China?
Thank you, Mr. Trump.
Thank you very much.
I'm 26. I'm a veteran. I help manage a private aviation company.
You want a job?
I'd love one. Yeah.
I'm looking for somebody very good.
I'm not for mandates or government interference in private business, but I've
Right.
seen Republicans going after us like DeSantis after Disney.
Right.
What would you do as president to protect us from government interference?
Well, I'm the one that really wants to protect you. All of these fake investigations of me are about election interference. They think because I'm leading Biden by 11 points, 7 points, 9 points, I'm leading DeSanctimonious by a lot. by 40 points or 45 points. I think he ought to just relax and take it easy and think about the future, because right now his future is not looking so good. I will tell you this. We are really putting it to Biden, but he's putting it to himself, because the economy stinks, inflation is horrible, and the border is a disaster. And by the way he got out of Afghanistan was the single most embarrassing moment in the history of our country.